About 5 years ago, I had a sleepover with my best friend. For this story, we'll call him Jay. Jay and I had been friends for a long time, and we would often hang out at each other's houses and spend the night. On this particular occasion, it was a Friday night, and he came to my place to play some Madden. We had planned before that he would stay over, so we were hoping to stay up really late playing against one another. At this time, we were both in high school, but my older sister and my older brother were both away at college, so I had the entire basement pretty much to myself. We played on my PlayStation 4 on a pretty big TV that we had down there. At about 10 p.m., as we were in the middle of a game, we heard the sound of a knock coming from the window. We both looked over in the direction, but couldn't see anything out of the window due to it being light inside and dark outside. We had a sliding glass door down there, but it had blinds covering that up. We both paused the game and were quiet for a few minutes. We heard what sounded like the bush outside my door moving. And both of us leaped up from that sound. I ran upstairs and told my parents what had happened. My dad came downstairs and looked out the window. Then, he walked outside and looked around. He came back in and said he didn't see anything. Neither of my parents seemed too concerned about it and said it was probably just an animal. I didn't think it seemed like a noise that an animal would make, however, but we just made sure to lock the door and kept playing Madden. Around an hour later, my parents came down to say goodnight and that they were going to bed. Only around 20 minutes after that, we heard the knocking once again. This time, we could hear it was coming from the window next to the door. It lasted longer this time than the first, but we still couldn't see anything as we looked out the window from across the room. It was pretty creepy, but my parents had just gone to bed, and I didn't want to wake them, so we tried to ignore it. We couldn't help but feel a little scared, though. We paused the game again and started talking about what we should do. We debated going outside or looking out the window. We decided to look out the window, but when we did, we saw nothing. After staying alert near the door for a while, we finally calmed back down and went back to playing video games until about 2 o'clock in the morning. During that time, we had no more interruptions. We both got pretty tired by then and decided to go to bed. I slept on one of the couches down there and Jay slept on the other. We fell asleep for probably an hour but awoke at around 3 in the morning to more noises once again. This time they seemed louder. It was more knocking as well as the bushes being moved. But now we heard the doorknob being jiggled, as if someone was trying to open it. Without hesitating, me and Jay both got up and ran upstairs as quick as we could. As we did, we got about halfway up the stairs, and we heard the sound of glass breaking coming from the basement. I was terrified and ran for my parents' room. Once we got inside, we called the police. My dad left the room to lock the door to the basement and make sure that the man couldn't get upstairs. We heard noises downstairs for a while, and then they stopped. The police arrived several minutes later. They looked around and searched the entire house, but the man was gone. They did see that several valuable items from the basement had been stolen, including my PlayStation 4. We were just happy to be safe, though. The police ended up being able to track down the man several days later, and I got a new PlayStation 4. It made for quite a story, though. This story took place when I was in college. I was a junior at the time, and I was in a history class where we got assigned a group project in groups of 4. The people in my group I didn't know very well at all. It was me, Matt, Anna, and Leonard. Matt and Anna seemed cool. So did Leonard for the most part, but he just gave me an odd feeling for some reason. We had to take a field trip to complete one of our big group projects that was worth a lot of points. We decided to all carpool together and collect the data we needed at a historical area around an hour away. Leonard volunteered to drive us, so we all met at his house, and he drove us there. Once we were done, he drove us all back to his house. When we got back, we had some work to do with answering questions, and it took us quite a long time, a lot longer than we had expected. It got to be pretty late at night, and we all got very tired, but we weren't finished, so Leonard suggested we all spend the night at his place. I didn't really want to, but we were all really tired, and he had a lot of space because he told us his roommates were away, so we agreed to stay over. Leonard went to his room, and they had enough couches for all of us to each sleep on one in the living room. It was actually pretty comfortable, either that, or I was just so tired that I fell right asleep. However, I woke up sometime later. When I did, I looked up and about had a heart attack. I saw Leonard literally standing on the end of the couch that I was sleeping on, staring right at me and smiling. It was a very creepy smile. The room was very dark, but this I could see clearly. I looked up and saw the other two people in our group asleep on their couches. I whispered to Leonard, asking him what he was doing, but he didn't answer me. He just kept smiling and staring at me. I then sat up and backed away to the far end of the couch, away from him. He remained standing on the arm of the couch at the other far end, and then dramatically jumped off to the ground and sprinted out of the room. I sat there for several minutes trying to understand what had just happened. Then I saw Leonard's head poke out from behind the doorway and look at me. This time I called out to him. "Leonard," I said. At this point I saw Anna wake up. She watched Leonard as well. He just looked at us both and smiled. Then he made the hand motion with his hands as if he was taking a picture of us with a camera. He then ran out of the room once again. Anna looked at me and whispered, "What was that?" I shrugged, and we both sat there for about 30 minutes. Leonard didn't come back to the room after that. Eventually, I was able to fall back asleep and woke up the next morning at 8. Leonard was back to normal, and we finished the project. Once we were all done and about to leave, I asked him what he was doing the previous night. He acted like he didn't know what we were talking about, and Anna backed me up on the story. Matt seemed really interested as we told the story, even though he had slept through the whole thing. When we described to Leonard what happened, he told us we had to be joking with him. We asked him if he sleepwalked, and he said no, he never did that. We were very puzzled when we heard that. Then he shook his head and said, "Never mind, I guess I was sleepwalking." He said he had no memory of it at all whatsoever. We all laughed at that we finally had a logical explanation for what had happened, although I was still a little creeped out. As we were all walking out the door to leave, Leonard called my name as I was about to step outside. I looked back at him, and he once again made the hand motion that he was taking a picture of me, the same motion he had made the night before. As he did, he winked at me. This really gave me the creeps, and it leads me to believe Leonard was not sleepwalking at all but awake the previous night. But I never saw Leonard again after that, and I really have no explanation for what happened. The story I'm about to tell you happened when I was a kid. I would guess about 10 years old. I'm 26 now, but I remember it like it was yesterday. I was in elementary school at the time, and there was this new kid named Robert that was in my grade. The first day of school, we sat next to each other in class, so I kind of became Robert's first friend since he moved into town. In the months that followed, Robert made some more friends that weren't really in my friend group. Plus, we didn't have any classes together the next semester, so we kind of went our separate ways and didn't talk as much. However, we would still say hi in the hallways once in a while and be friendly with one another. I remember when it came towards the end of the school year, Robert told me his birthday was coming up and he was wondering if I wanted to hang out. I said, sure, and he gave me his mother's phone number and told my mom to call his. I went to the store and got him a video game that I knew he would like, and on Friday after school, I went to his house. When I got to his house, I saw that there was 2 other kids there who I didn't really know from my school. We started out having pizza and then played a few games. As the party went on, I ended up getting along with Robert's friends very nicely, and it was a fun time. At about midnight, we all went to bed on Robert's living room floor. I got the spot on the very far end, which was right next to the dining room. I fell asleep rather quickly, but awoke sometime later in the middle of the night. I heard some voices quietly talking, but they weren't kids' voices. They sounded like adults. I noticed there was pitch black as I looked around. As my eyes started to adjust, I could hear the talking was coming from the dining room that I was near. I was angled at a point where I couldn't quite see much of the dining room due to a wall with the TV on it, but I could make out part of the table. I listened closer and could hear a man's voice, as well as another man and a woman. From where I was, I could only see their feet, but I couldn't make out anything they were saying. I figured it had to be Robert's parents, but I didn't know who the third person was, because Robert told me he didn't have any siblings. Plus, this man seemed to be a full-grown adult, Just then, I heard one of them raise their voice. I squinted and looked at my watch and saw that it was slightly past 4 in the morning. It seemed a little bit odd for his parents to be up at this time. I looked at the rest of the boys sleeping to see if any of them were awake, but they all seemed to be fast asleep. I wasn't tired anymore, however, and I guess my curiosity got the better of me because I leaned over slowly and looked around the corner into the dining room. I saw a man in a black jacket, and another man and a woman who I assumed were Robert's parents, though I couldn't make out anybody very well in the dark. They were talking, but I couldn't really tell what they were talking about. Then they all seemed to notice me, and they all stopped talking at once. I quickly ducked back into my sleeping bag and closed my eyes again to go back to sleep. I was sort of embarrassed that they had seen me spying on them. Eventually, I just drifted off back to sleep and woke up the next morning with the other boys at around 9 a.m. We all got up and had some cereal for breakfast and played some video games. As we did, I asked Robert why his parents were talking to a man in the middle of the night at their dining room table, because the whole thing just seemed really odd to me. Robert said he didn't know anyone who would be at his house at 4 a.m. and said he didn't know why his parents would be up at that hour. Robert's mother came in and asked us how we slept, and when we did, Robert asked her my question. His mom looked at me and laughed. She said no man was here, and his parents had both slept the whole night in their room. She told me I must have been dreaming. I laughed and agreed with them because I didn't want to argue. However, I know myself, and I know that I was not dreaming. I was wide awake, and I know what I saw and heard. After that, I didn't go to Robert's house again. And at the end of the school year, he moved away again. We weren't able to stay in touch, so I may never know the answers to that night.